The flashes of cameras were relentless. Every step Meghan Markle took was a headline in motion. Every sway of her white ensemble a story waiting to be told. Paris Fashion Week had always been about glamour, influence, and the meticulous choreography of power, and yet, for the Duchess of Sussex, it became a stage for a drama far more personal than anyone expected. Imagine stepping into one of the most prestigious fashion shows in the world, surrounded by the glittering elite of haute couture, and being reminded, in the quietest but most cutting way, that no matter how polished your appearance, some doors are deliberately closed to you. That, in essence, is what happened when Meghan approached the Balenciaga Spring-Summer 2026 show's front row. But this wasn't just a snub, it was a message, and the eyes of the world were watching. The Duchess arrived in a sleek all-white ensemble, a choice that was both bold and symbolic. White, the color of new beginnings, of innocence, of poised defiance. Every fold, every seam, seemed curated to perfection. Her hair caught the Parisian lights in soft waves, her makeup flawless yet understated, a testament to someone who knows the power of subtlety. And yet, as perfect as she appeared, the tension in the air was palpable. Those who know the language of the front row, the subtle nods, the careful spacing, the micro-expressions that reveal hidden hierarchies, understood immediately. Something was off. Someone at that table was about to make a statement that would reverberate far beyond the gilded walls of the Parisian venue. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. That someone, of course, was Anna Wintour. The woman whose gaze can make or break careers, whose word in the fashion world is nearly law. To be snubbed by Anna Wintour isn't merely embarrassing, it's a declaration. The power dynamics of the fashion elite are subtle but absolute, and Wintour wields her influence with surgical precision. As Meghan approached, eyes subtly scanning for acknowledgement, for even the smallest gesture of welcome, it never came. There was a polite smile, the kind one offers to a stranger at a gallery opening. But there was no invitation to sit. No acknowledgement that Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, was not only present, but in many ways expected to be welcomed. In that moment, the cold edge of exclusion sliced through the glittering atmosphere. Let's pause for a moment. This is Paris Fashion Week, the epicenter of style, influence, and image management. Here, seating is everything. The front row is not just a seat. It's a throne of power, a public declaration of status. To be moved, shifted, or ignored in that environment is akin to a public trial. Except the jury is composed of the world's most influential fashion editors, celebrities, designers, and photographers. Imagine the humiliation, the sudden rush of awareness that, despite every carefully curated appearance, you are, in the eyes of some, not welcome. The cameras are relentless. The whispers, almost inaudible, carry weight. And the world will see it all. So, why would Anna Wintour do this? Was it a personal vendetta? A subtle lesson in humility? Or was it something more calculated? A reminder that no matter the titles, the fame, or the public favor, the hierarchy of influence does not bend easily, even for royalty? There are whispers backstage, the kind of murmurings that never make it to print but always inform the atmosphere. Some claim that tensions have been simmering for months, subtle disagreements over editorial influence, social appearances, and the intersection of celebrity and fashion authority. Others insist that Wintour's decision was immediate, instinctual, a response to something far less visible but far more significant in her world, the delicate preservation of power. Whatever the reasoning, the snub was real, palpable, and captured in ways no one could ignore. And then there's Meghan herself. How does a woman accustomed to navigating the scrutinized corridors of both royalty and Hollywood respond to public exclusion? The Duchess's history is marked by resilience, strategic grace, and an acute awareness of optics. Every smile, every gesture, every pause has been curated for both impact and perception. And yet, as she confronted the frozen politeness of Anna Wintour, a rare vulnerability flickered across her expression, a silent question. How far does influence extend, and can even royalty transcend it? It's an intimate moment of tension, witnessed by the world, dissected in microseconds, and yet profoundly human. Because no matter your status, there are times when a glance, a gesture, or the refusal of acknowledgement reminds you of your fragility. The reaction was instantaneous. Photographers captured the subtle shift in Meghan's posture, the almost imperceptible tightening of her jaw, the poised but wary steps as she found an alternative seat. Social media, as always, was merciless. Within minutes, the incident exploded across platforms. Clips circulated, screenshots multiplied, commentary ranged from sympathetic to scathing. The hashtags began trending almost immediately. Hashtag Meghan snubbed, hashtag front row drama, hashtag Anna versus Meghan. Memes emerged, editorial pieces dissected body language, and opinion threads debated the very meaning of exclusion in a world obsessed with visibility. It wasn't just a moment. It was a narrative unfolding in real time, one that blurred the lines between fashion critique, celebrity gossip, and cultural commentary. Yet there is more to this than meets the eye. Front row politics, especially at an event like Balenciaga, are rarely about fashion alone. They are about alliances, subtle power plays, and the messaging that reverberates across industries. A snub here is never just a snub. It's a carefully calculated signal. To insiders, it speaks volumes about who is influential, who is accepted, and who remains on the margins. And Meghan Markle, despite her global recognition, found herself at that margin, at least in the eyes of one of the most powerful figures in fashion. But what does this mean for her image, her standing in elite social circles, and her carefully cultivated narrative as a royal-turned-global icon? The answer is more complicated than a simple yes or no. It's a story woven through power, perception, and human emotion. And there's the emotional undertone that cannot be ignored. For anyone who has ever faced subtle rejection, the sting is personal, even if the world sees it as trivial. Meghan's history, navigating the intense scrutiny of royal life and Hollywood fame, has prepared her for headlines, but preparation does not inoculate against the feeling of being deliberately sidelined. In that split second, she is not just a public figure. She is human, vulnerable, acutely aware of the eyes and the judgments of everyone around her. And it is this tension, the collision of personal emotion with public spectacle, that creates the drama the world is now fixated on. Now, consider the ripple effect. When someone like Meghan Markle is snubbed, it's not confined to one event or one evening. The story travels across continents, across social media, into late-night commentary, and even into the corridors of power and influence in fashion and celebrity culture. Relationships are strained, reputations recalibrated, and alliances subtly redefined. What seems like a single moment in a Parisian theater of fashion is, in reality, a pivot point in the intricate web of celebrity influence. And those watching, reporters, fans, critics, and insiders alike, know it. They analyze every frame, every gesture, and every response, because these signals, small as they may appear, carry weight. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect is what happens next. Meghan, poised as always, does not lash out, does not confront publicly, and yet the incident sets the stage for speculation, rumor, and dramatic interpretation. Did she plan a private response? Will her team issue a statement? Are there longer-term implications for her relationship with the fashion world? The unanswered questions swirl in the minds of onlookers, creating suspense, anticipation, and an insatiable curiosity. And that, more than the snub itself, is what makes this story compelling. Because in the world of celebrity and influence, the unknown often holds more power than the known. So, as the cameras continue to flash, and as the whispers of the elite mingle with the soft rustle of couture fabrics, we are left with a single, compelling thought. Power, status, and influence are not measured by titles alone. Sometimes, they are measured by the smallest gestures, the quietest refusals, and the subtlest acts of exclusion. And in this instance, Meghan Markle faced one of the most potent demonstrations of that truth. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The moment Meghan Markle stepped out of the sleek black limousine onto the cobblestone streets of Paris, the world seemed to hold its breath. Every flash from the cameras, every click of the shutters, created a rhythm that marked her arrival like a drumbeat heralding a queen. Yet the stage she entered was far from welcoming. The Balenciaga Spring-Summer 2026 show was the epicenter of global fashion power, a place where designers, editors, celebrities, and socialites congregated to display not only couture but influence. And Meghan, in her signature poise, had become both an attraction and a threat in this charged atmosphere. She wore white, not just any white, but a seamless ensemble that seemed to glow under the Parisian streetlights, a carefully calculated choice. White speaks in many languages. It whispers purity, confidence, audacity. It says, "I belong," even when the world signals otherwise. Her ensemble was sculpted yet soft, the fabric hugging her frame while flowing with an elegance that demanded attention. The cut was sharp, but the movement was fluid. A long coat draped just enough to hint at drama, her shoes a subtle statement of understated power. Every choice was deliberate, every detail a proclamation. Meghan Markle was not just attending Paris Fashion Week. She was here to be seen, and more importantly, to be remembered. As she walked the short distance from the car to the venue, the photographer's lenses seemed almost invasive, yet they captured every flicker of expression, every subtle glance. And the front row awaited, a row that represents the zenith of style and status, the place where influence is concentrated in a few inches of gold-trimmed seating. Among the attendees was Anna Wintour, the ultimate arbiter of fashion authority. To sit in front of her, to receive even the slightest acknowledgement, is to validate one's place in the hierarchy. Meghan knew this. The question was whether she would be recognized or deliberately overlooked. The entrance itself became a moment of theater. Paparazzi shouted, flashes exploded, and the soft murmur of elite spectators filled the air. Meghan's team had rehearsed the choreography, the timing of her step, the angle of her gaze, the smile that balances confidence with grace. But no amount of preparation could shield her from the subtle tensions that crackled as she neared the front row. The whispers started immediately, editors leaning over to exchange observations, stylists adjusting their notes, socialites watching closely. Who is she really? What is she wearing? Will she command the attention or disrupt the order? Every thought, unspoken but felt, intensified the stakes. And then came the moment of approach. Meghan's eyes scanned the line of chairs, noting the familiar yet formidable presence of Anna Wintour. The air seemed to thicken. A polite smile, almost imperceptible, met Meghan's glance. But then, a pause, a slight tilt of the head, a quiet, almost imperceptible gesture that communicated volumes. There was no seat for her here. The recognition was there, yes, but the invitation was absent. In that heartbeat, the spectacle of fashion collided with the reality of power. Meghan, used to commanding rooms and cameras, found herself facing a quiet, elegant exclusion. It was subtle, but everyone around her understood the message. Her reaction, as captured in photographs and later dissected by the media, was a study in controlled poise. A slight adjustment of her posture, a measured breath, a soft lift of the chin. Meghan did not react publicly. She did not confront. Her body language, however, communicated a nuanced blend of acknowledgement and resolve. It was as if she silently said, "I see this. I will navigate this. But I am not diminished." This is the mark of someone who has mastered the art of public perception. Even under pressure, even in the face of exclusion, she maintained an air of dignity. Yet, the tension did not dissipate. Around her, the whispers grew louder, the cameras more insistent. Social media would later capture these moments in GIFs and short clips, dissecting every tilt of the head and every micro-expression. Fans and critics alike debated what the snub meant. Was it a calculated assertion of Wintour's power? A subtle warning to other celebrities daring to enter her sphere? Or a deeper reflection of the ongoing struggle between Hollywood fame and fashion authority? Meghan's arrival had become more than a fashion statement. It was a live demonstration of influence, hierarchy, and the silent rules that govern the elite. The entrance also illuminated the contrasts in her world. She had come from a life steeped in royal protocol, media scrutiny, and celebrity culture, yet nothing prepared her entirely for the micropolitics of the fashion elite. In these spaces, the smallest gestures carry enormous weight. Who stands where, who is acknowledged, who is offered a seat. These are not trivial details. They are social codes, carefully maintained and fiercely guarded. And Meghan, entering with her white ensemble like a beacon, was simultaneously celebrated and scrutinized. The duality created a tension that the audience could feel, even if it was invisible to the naked eye. There was a moment, fleeting but unforgettable, when Meghan's gaze met Anna Wintour's. In that instant, countless interpretations emerged. Some saw a polite acknowledgement. Others detected a silent boundary being set. For photographers and onlookers, it was a frame that captured the story in one image. The confrontation of status, influence, and visibility, condensed into a single, powerful glance. It was both a promise and a warning. In this world, one must tread carefully, and even prominence does not guarantee acceptance. And yet, Meghan pressed forward. Gracefully, strategically, she found an alternative spot, maintaining her composure while subtly signaling that she would not be sidelined entirely. Every step was deliberate, a dance between acceptance of circumstance and assertion of presence. It was a lesson in resilience under scrutiny, a demonstration of the kind of poise that has defined her public life. But even as she settled, the story was just beginning. The snub, the whispers, the flashes, all of it combined into a narrative that would dominate headlines, fuel social media debates, and provoke discussions about influence, celebrity, and the subtle ways power manifests. For those watching, this was more than a fashion moment. It was a lesson in the invisible rules that govern social hierarchies, the subtle dynamics that even the most powerful must navigate, and the intricate ballet of status and perception. Meghan's entrance had captured attention not simply because of the outfit she wore, but because of the tension she embodied. The collision of Hollywood celebrity, royal gravitas, and the unyielding authority of fashion's most influential figures. And then the whispers grew louder, the anticipation heightened. The cameras continued their relentless click-clack, each flash capturing a story that was only beginning to unfold. What Meghan would do next, how she would respond to the snub, how she would navigate the front row, how she would confront or circumvent the subtle exclusion, remained unseen, unknown, but profoundly compelling. In the world of high fashion, one misstep or one act of grace can define a career, a reputation, and a public narrative. The world waited, watching every motion, every glance, every calculated step. The Duchess of Sussex had arrived, poised and resplendent, yet the drama was just beginning. Because in this elite theater of power, presence alone does not guarantee influence. Status must be asserted, acknowledged, and, at times, defended. And Meghan Markle, in her white ensemble and unwavering poise, was about to navigate one of the most scrutinized stages of her life. But what she encountered next in that front row would set the tone for an unforgettable showdown of influence, perception, and silent power struggles. And it was a moment that no one, not even Meghan herself, could have fully anticipated. If there is one figure in the fashion world whose presence commands immediate attention, it is Anna Wintour. Known for her icy gaze, impeccable bob, and signature sunglasses, Wintour is not just an editor, she is an institution. For decades, she has defined trends, launched careers, and wielded influence that extends far beyond the glossy pages of Vogue. To be acknowledged by Anna Wintour is to receive validation at the highest level. To be ignored, or worse, subtly snubbed, is to feel the full weight of fashion's silent hierarchies. Anna's power is not flamboyant. It is quiet, deliberate, and absolute. Those who underestimate her do so at their peril. In the world of haute couture, where every detail is scrutinized, Wintour's nod can propel a designer to international acclaim overnight, while a mere glance of disinterest can relegate a celebrity to the margins. Her authority is so pervasive that she rarely needs to speak. A single look or tilt of the head communicates volumes. It is in this unspoken language that the Duchess of Sussex found herself tested the moment she approached the front row. Consider the scene. The front row is arranged not merely by celebrity status, but by a complex blend of fashion relevance, social alliances, and perceived influence. A space next to Anna Wintour is not just a seat, it is a statement. To occupy it is to signal prominence, recognition, and approval. To be denied it, even politely, is to feel the subtle assertion of hierarchy. No matter your fame, your titles, or your global recognition, some circles remain exclusive, and entry is granted only to those deemed worthy. Meghan's approach, in her pristine white ensemble, represented a collision of worlds. Hollywood celebrity meets royal prestige, confronting the unyielding authority of fashion's most formidable gatekeeper. Anna's history of selective acknowledgement is legendary. She has subtly sidelined celebrities, omitted names from glossy spreads, and orchestrated seating arrangements that convey silent, yet powerful messages. These choices are rarely publicized in full, but the outcomes are felt immediately. A snub, in Wintour's universe, is never accidental. It carries intention, consequence, and, above all, power. For those navigating these spaces, understanding the nuances of her influence is essential. Meghan, no stranger to public scrutiny, was nonetheless stepping into an environment where the rules were unspoken and the stakes were enormous. Yet, it is essential to recognize that Wintour's authority is rarely overt. She rarely delivers public critiques, preferring instead to wield influence through subtlety and observation. Her power is invisible but palpable. It is felt in gestures, glances, and seating arrangements. For Meghan, the challenge was not merely to respond, but to understand the unspoken rules and navigate them with grace, strategy, and calculated restraint. Every move she made, from posture to expression, became a statement, both of acknowledgement and of defiance. The tension reached its peak as Meghan approached the front row. Cameras captured the nuanced moment. A polite smile met her gaze, but there was no invitation to sit. The message, silent yet undeniable, resonated through the room. In this arena, presence does not equal acceptance. The subtle assertion of power, the deliberate choice to withhold acknowledgement, exemplifies the influence that Anna Wintour commands effortlessly. Meghan, despite her poise, felt the weight of authority, the challenge of navigating a space where social currency is measured in gestures and subtle cues. Observers immediately noted the interplay of expressions, body language, and unspoken communication. Analysts, journalists, and fashion insiders dissected the scene, creating narratives that would dominate coverage for days. Social media, ever vigilant, amplified the tension. Memes, GIFs, and commentary dissected every movement. The incident became a case study in influence, hierarchy, and the subtle ways in which power is exercised in elite circles. And at the center of it all, Meghan remained composed, aware of the scrutiny, and prepared for the complex negotiation of visibility and authority that lay ahead. But even as the front row drama unfolded, another layer of intrigue began to emerge. Wintour's power, while formidable, is also strategic. Every action is calculated to maintain balance, assert influence, and shape perception. The snub, while seemingly simple, was part of a larger narrative, one that would unfold over the coming hours, days, and weeks. It was a message not only to Meghan Markle, but to everyone watching. In the world of fashion, authority is measured not by fame alone, but by the ability to command acknowledgement, influence perception, and control the narrative without uttering a word. And the most compelling question lingered. How would Meghan respond to this subtle yet potent assertion of power? Would she challenge it, circumvent it, or gracefully accept it while plotting her next move? The answer, hidden behind a composed exterior, held the promise of drama, strategy, and spectacle, a story that the world was only beginning to witness. Because in the universe Anna Wintour commands, influence is invisible, authority is silent, and the slightest gesture can speak louder than words. And Meghan Markle, stepping into this elite theater, was about to discover just how powerful a single glance could be. But what came next in the front row, an encounter that would ignite whispers, headlines, and debates across the globe, was more shocking than anyone could have anticipated. The room was electric. Every camera flash, every whisper, every shuffling foot added to the tension that hung like an invisible curtain over the front row. Meghan Markle, in her pristine all-white ensemble, moved with grace, yet the air seemed to thicken as she neared her anticipated seat. The Balenciaga Spring-Summer 2026 show was not merely a fashion event. It was a stage where influence, power, and perception collided, and for Meghan, that collision was about to become painfully tangible. She approached Anna Wintour, the woman whose reputation precedes her, whose influence extends far beyond the glossy pages of Vogue. Every detail of the encounter was amplified by the media frenzy, photographers capturing her gaze, stylists observing posture, editors noting subtle shifts in expression. And then it happened. The snub, a subtle but unmistakable gesture. No invitation, no acknowledgement, just a slight, almost imperceptible movement indicating that Meghan's anticipated proximity was denied. The world may have seen a polite smile, but insiders knew the weight of the message. You are not welcome here. The front row, normally a place of curated elegance and silent networking, had become a theater of tension. The seated attendees, many seasoned in the nuances of high fashion, caught the micro-expression that spoke volumes. Editors leaned toward each other, whispering in barely audible tones, their voices carrying the subtext of exclusivity and hierarchy. Socialites adjusted their posture, aware that the unfolding drama was more than a simple seating arrangement. It was a declaration of power, an assertion that even a global celebrity and duchess must navigate the invisible boundaries of elite circles. Meghan's initial reaction was the picture of poise. She straightened her back, lifted her chin, and maintained a calm composure that belied the sting of exclusion. Her eyes, however, betrayed a flicker of awareness, a momentary acknowledgement that even in spaces where she commands global attention, she could be deliberately sidelined. Every step, every glance was now a calculated act of both grace and strategy. The cameras captured the moment, and within seconds, social media erupted. Fans, critics, and fashion insiders debated the encounter endlessly. Was it intentional? Was it personal? Or was it merely the unspoken rules of an exclusive industry at play? Whispers backstage suggested the snub was no accident. Sources, speaking on condition of anonymity, revealed that tensions between Meghan's team and Wintour's inner circle had been simmering for months. Disagreements over appearances, editorial representation, and perceived influence were all part of a complex web of interpersonal and professional dynamics. Some claimed that Wintour's refusal to seat Meghan nearby was a deliberate message. In this world, no one, not even royalty, is exempt from scrutiny or the invisible hierarchies that govern influence. The public, of course, would never witness the backstage negotiations, the fleeting glances, the subtle gestures that carry far more weight than any words. They saw only the composed exterior, the white ensemble, and the cameras flashing like a drumbeat signaling every nuance. And yet, the interpretation of those moments would dominate headlines, ignite social media debates, and provoke discussions across continents. A single act, a refusal to offer a seat, had become a narrative loaded with drama, symbolism, and social commentary. Inside the room, the tension was almost tangible. Photographers repositioned themselves to capture every reaction. Journalists leaned forward, eager to note the slightest twitch of a finger or shift of the eyes. Editors and designers exchanged subtle cues, understanding the implications of what they were witnessing. In elite fashion circles, the smallest gestures communicate enormous meaning, and Meghan's snub would be analyzed for months to come. It was a study in influence, how presence, expectation, and subtle exclusion intersect to reinforce hierarchies. Yet, Meghan was not defeated. Her response was strategic. She chose an alternative seat, carefully calculating visibility, posture, and optics. Her team worked discreetly, ensuring that her movement was seamless, unshaken, and dignified. The snub, though public and humiliating to some observers, did not define her presence. Instead, it highlighted her ability to navigate complex social dynamics with composure and awareness. Her every choice, where to sit, how to position her body, how to engage with cameras, became part of a broader strategy, demonstrating her understanding of optics and influence. The photographers, however, captured more than just her composure. They documented the tension, the micro-expressions of Anna Wintour, and the reactions of the surrounding attendees. Every image told a story, a narrative of authority, resistance, and the subtle negotiation of power. Media outlets around the world would later dissect these photographs frame by frame, analyzing eye contact, hand placement, and body orientation. Each tiny gesture became fodder for headlines. Meghan snubbed at Paris Fashion Week. Anna Wintour denies Duchess front row seat. Front row power play. Celebrity meets fashion authority. Social media amplified the drama exponentially. Within minutes, clips and photos went viral, sparking debates across platforms. Some commentators framed the snub as a personal slight, evidence of lingering tension between Meghan and the fashion establishment. Others interpreted it as a symbolic assertion of hierarchy, a reminder that fame and titles do not automatically confer influence in every arena. Memes emerged, hashtags trended, and commentary ranged from sympathetic to critical, reflecting the polarized perceptions of Meghan's global audience. Yet the most intriguing aspect of the snub was its subtlety. It was not dramatic, overt, or confrontational. Instead, it relied on the invisible power of microgestures and unspoken hierarchies. In elite circles, this is the language of authority. Silence, body language, and the refusal of acknowledgement communicate more effectively than words. Meghan, accustomed to public scrutiny and complex social dynamics, understood this. Her reaction, composed, poised, yet aware, demonstrated an acute understanding of the stakes. At the same time, the incident highlighted the intersection of celebrity, royalty, and fashion influence. Meghan embodies a unique combination of both, a public figure with global recognition and a royal background that carries its own expectations and pressures. The snub underscored the challenges of navigating spaces where influence is measured not only by fame, but by acceptance into elite social hierarchies. It was a moment that revealed the invisible rules governing access, acknowledgement, and authority in one of the most scrutinized arenas in the world. And yet, the drama was far from over. Observers noticed subtle movements, whispered conversations, and fleeting glances that suggested the snub was only the beginning of a larger narrative. Editors, designers, and insiders began to speculate about what this encounter meant for future interactions, collaborations, and perceptions. The incident was no longer confined to the front row. It had become a catalyst for discussion, rumor, and intrigue that would unfold long after the show ended. The snub at the front row, while subtle, became a powerful statement. It demonstrated that in spaces defined by influence, authority is both invisible and absolute. Meghan Markle, despite her poise, fame, and royal standing, had encountered the full force of this reality. Yet, the question that lingered in the air was unavoidable. How would she respond to this challenge? And what strategies would she deploy to reclaim both visibility and influence in a space designed to test even the most seasoned figures? Because in the world of fashion, the smallest gestures carry immense weight, and a single refusal, a seat denied, a glance withheld, can reverberate across industries, media, and social circles. Meghan's next moves would be watched, analyzed, and interpreted with intense scrutiny. And as the flashes continued and the whispers spread, one thing became clear. The snub was more than a moment. It was the opening chapter in a story of power, perception, and the subtle art of influence. But what happened immediately after? The whispered exchanges, the backstage movements, and the reactions of those closest to Meghan would shock everyone who thought they understood the dynamics of the front row. Backstage at Paris Fashion Week is a world few outsiders ever glimpse. It is an intricate ballet of timing, tension, and meticulous orchestration, where designers, stylists, assistants, and celebrities navigate an environment pulsing with both creativity and competition. Every seamstress, every makeup artist, and every stylist plays a part in a delicate ecosystem where appearances are everything and influence flows invisibly. And it was here, behind the velvet curtains and golden ropes, that the story of Meghan Markle's front row snub truly began to unfold. While the cameras captured the polished exterior of the runway and front row, backstage was a different theater entirely. Whispers bounced off mirrored walls and racks of couture garments. Conversations barely audible over the hum of hair dryers, buzzing lights, and the soft rustle of silk. Sources speaking under anonymity later revealed that tensions had been simmering for weeks. Meghan's team, intent on ensuring the Duchess maintained her visibility and prominence, had clashed subtly but persistently with Anna Wintour's inner circle. Scheduling, seating arrangements, and media exposure had been points of negotiation and quiet contention. Every decision, seemingly minor, carried the weight of unspoken power. According to insiders, the snub was not spontaneous. Wintour's refusal to offer Meghan a seat in close proximity was a deliberate and calculated move, a quiet assertion of authority. It sent a message: status alone does not guarantee influence. And no matter how globally recognized you are, acceptance into elite circles is earned, managed, and controlled. The subtlety of the snub, polite yet firm, was a testament to Wintour's mastery of social power. It was a lesson in humility wrapped in elegance, delivered silently but unmistakably. Backstage, the reactions were immediate. Meghan's team exchanged quick glances, whispering in measured tones, each word carrying the tension of the moment. Some expressed concern over optics, the way cameras had captured the front-row dynamics, while others debated the strategic response. One unnamed stylist reportedly said, "She handled it well, but everyone knows what that meant. That wasn't just a seat, it was a statement." The sentiment was echoed among several fashion insiders. The incident was more than social etiquette. It was symbolic, loaded with implications about hierarchy, power, and perception. But beyond the obvious tension, there were undercurrents of intrigue. Whispers suggested that certain backstage figures had been tasked with subtly influencing the dynamics, ensuring that the front row reflected a hierarchy aligned with Anna Wintour's vision. Some of these measures were simple: adjusting seating charts, managing media angles, or even orchestrating timing so that specific encounters occurred or were avoided at precise moments. Others were more nuanced, involving the dissemination of subtle cues and signals intended to reinforce authority. Meghan's arrival had disrupted these delicate arrangements, creating ripples that extended through the carefully maintained ecosystem of influence. One particularly intriguing revelation emerged from an insider source. There were reportedly multiple meetings leading up to the show where Meghan's team and Wintour's advisors discussed seating, media access, and the optics of her attendance. These were not confrontations, but strategic negotiations, subtle discussions about positioning, prominence, and perception. Yet, the underlying tension was unmistakable. Wintour, who wields influence effortlessly, appears to have made a deliberate choice, signaling that even someone of Meghan's stature could not dictate terms without consequences. The backstage environment, usually organized and harmonious, had transformed into a theater of silent maneuvering, with every player aware of the stakes and the power dynamics at play. Even those not directly involved were watching closely. Hair and makeup artists, interns, and assistants, all accustomed to the rhythm of Paris Fashion Week, could sense the heightened tension. Small gestures, like the deliberate placement of a chair, a subtle shift in a mirror's angle, or a whispered instruction, took on amplified meaning. Every movement became part of an invisible narrative, a story of power, influence, and the subtle assertion of hierarchy. Meghan's poise and composure in this charged environment were remarkable, but the backstage whispers made it clear this was not just about fashion. It was about influence, authority, and the intricate rules governing elite circles. Adding to the drama, several insiders hinted at private exchanges between Wintour's team and members of Meghan's entourage. These were described as delicate, sometimes tense discussions about optics, positioning, and strategy. While no one publicly confirmed the content of these conversations, their very existence suggested a layered negotiation, a dance between recognition and control, influence and hierarchy. Meghan was navigating not just the visible stage of the front row, but the invisible battlefield of backstage influence, where authority is exercised subtly, yet with precision. Social media, of course, was already abuzz. While the public witnessed only the front row snub, insiders knew that the story backstage was equally compelling. Observers speculated endlessly about the motivations, alliances, and strategic choices shaping the encounter. Some suggested that Wintour's refusal to seat Meghan nearby was a reminder of her authority and a message to other attendees. Hierarchy matters. Influence is earned, and visibility can be controlled. Others posited that it was a personal response to past interactions, a subtle assertion of boundaries and expectations. Regardless of the reasoning, the whispers backstage confirmed what everyone watching could sense. This was a moment of calculated power. Meghan's own reaction backstage was careful, deliberate, and strategic. She maintained composure, adjusted her posture, and engaged in discreet discussions with her team about optics and next steps. Every decision was calibrated to balance dignity with visibility, ensuring that she could navigate the complex dynamics without escalating the conflict. Sources noted that Meghan was acutely aware of the cameras, the observers, and the whispers circulating in real time. She understood that in elite environments, perception is as critical as reality, and every move would be scrutinized, interpreted, and remembered. Yet the backstage whispers hinted at something even more compelling, that the snub was not the end of the story. Some insiders suggested that there were ongoing negotiations behind the scenes, subtle maneuverings intended to influence the outcome of the evening and shape the narrative beyond the immediate incident. The backstage environment, invisible to the public, was a crucible of strategy, influence, and subtle negotiation, and Meghan was right at its center. And then there were the subtle signals, the fleeting looks exchanged between assistants, the slight adjustments in seating for other attendees, the whispered instructions about positioning. Each of these small acts contributed to a larger narrative, a story of hierarchy, influence, and power dynamics that extended far beyond the front row. Observers noted that the backstage energy was different from any other show. It was charged, tense, and deeply aware of the implications of every gesture. Meghan's presence had disrupted a carefully maintained order, forcing subtle adjustments, negotiations, and calculations across the elite circle of fashion authority. By the time the show began, the backstage whispers had set the stage for the evening's unfolding drama. Every attendee, from celebrities to editors, understood that something significant had occurred. Meghan's entrance, the snub, and the behind-the-scenes negotiations had created a story that would dominate coverage, ignite social media debates, and provoke discussions about influence, hierarchy, and the subtle art of power. The whispers, though inaudible to most, carried weight. They confirmed that the incident was more than a fleeting moment. It was a calculated demonstration of authority, carefully orchestrated and deeply impactful. And as the models began their walk, the cameras continued to flash, and the audience absorbed every detail. One thing was clear: backstage, the story was just beginning. The whispers hinted at strategies, responses, and maneuvers that no one outside that room could yet understand. Meghan Markle, poised and composed, was about to navigate an even more complex narrative, one that would unfold in both visible and invisible arenas, shaping perception, influence, and the conversation for weeks to come. But what came next? The subtle negotiations, private encounters, and reactions of insiders would reveal secrets that no one expected, secrets that could redefine the entire story of the snub and its impact on both Meghan and the fashion world. The moment Meghan Markle realized the snub was not an oversight, not a misstep, but a deliberate act, the room seemed to contract around her. Cameras clicked incessantly, flashes punctuating the tense atmosphere, capturing every subtle movement, every micro-expression, every imperceptible adjustment in posture. In a world where every gesture is magnified, every reaction dissected, Meghan faced a challenge few could comprehend: maintain grace while navigating exclusion in front of the world. Her first instinct, internal but profoundly strategic, was to breathe. A single controlled breath can stabilize the body, command the mind, and project composure even when the heart is racing. Meghan had spent years under scrutiny, from red carpets in Hollywood to royal engagements that made the tabloids pulse. She understood that poise is not just about appearance, it is armor. Yet, poise alone was insufficient. In this instance, it needed to communicate awareness, dignity, and subtle defiance without ever seeming confrontational. Every photographer's lens, every journalist's pen, every observer's eye would be tracing the story in her posture. Meghan adjusted her stance, shoulders back, chin elevated, and eyes scanning the front row for a viable alternative. Her movement was deliberate, almost choreographed, signaling that while the preferred space had been denied, she was not diminished. Observers later noted the elegance in her navigation, the way she claimed a new seat without haste or hesitation. In elite circles, such subtlety is a skill. The ability to respond to exclusion while projecting control is rare and deeply respected. Yet, even as she composed herself, the emotional undercurrent was undeniable. This was not merely about a seat. It was about acknowledgement, power, and the public perception of influence. The cameras, ever hungry for drama, captured the transition in intimate detail. A slight adjustment of the coat, a purposeful step forward, a subtle tilt of the head, all conveyed a complex narrative of self-possession, strategy, and quiet resilience. In that single motion, Meghan was asserting that she remained visible, relevant, and dignified, despite the intentional exclusion. Analysts and social media commentators would later dissect these moments frame by frame, interpreting every nuance, every subtle sign of emotional intelligence, and every calculated choice in posture and expression. But poise is only part of the equation. Meghan's awareness of optics extended beyond the immediate front row. She understood the narrative ripple, photographers capturing the angle, social media instantly amplifying the images, fashion journalists noting the micro-behaviors, and insiders exchanging whispers about hierarchy and influence. Each action had to be carefully measured. Too much assertiveness might appear confrontational, too little could signal passivity. The delicate balance required mastery of both perception and emotional intelligence, a skill Meghan had honed through years of public life. Her team played an equally critical role. Strategists and assistants moved subtly, positioning themselves to manage sight lines, ensure optimal visibility, and minimize potential misinterpretations of her response. Yet even with support, Meghan's composure was the centerpiece. Every step she took was a statement. She remained in control, aware of the snub but unwilling to let it define her narrative. In a world obsessed with optics, this silent assertion of authority became a powerful act of defiance, precisely because it was understated. Beyond posture and strategic movement, Meghan's gaze became a tool of communication. Her eyes, steady yet alert, conveyed awareness without confrontation. In elite social dynamics, eye contact is potent. It can signal acknowledgement, resistance, or calculation. Meghan's controlled gaze projected confidence, while subtly signaling that she had registered the exclusion. It was a nuanced performance, invisible to the untrained eye, but unmistakable to those attuned to the language of influence. Yet, maintaining composure under scrutiny is as much psychological as physical. Meghan's internal dialogue, though invisible, was undoubtedly active, analyzing reactions, calculating next moves, and preparing for potential contingencies. In high-pressure environments, the mind processes micro-decisions rapidly. How do I engage photographers? Should I interact with other attendees? What is the safest path to maintain visibility and authority? Meghan navigated these questions with precision, revealing a strategic acumen that few outside her inner circle could fully appreciate. Her response was also an act of narrative control. By maintaining elegance and composure, she ensured that the story remained under her implicit direction. The snub could have defined the evening as an instance of public humiliation, but her strategic response reframed it. It became not a story of defeat but of resilience, grace under pressure, and the subtle assertion of authority in the face of exclusion. The narrative shift, though imperceptible in the moment, would later dominate media interpretations, social media commentary, and public discourse. The reactions around her were equally telling. Editors, stylists, and attendees observed the controlled composure with admiration, speculation, and, in some cases, discomfort. The front-row hierarchy, subtly challenged by Meghan's poise, created ripples across the audience. Those accustomed to navigating influence recognized the significance. Here was a figure accustomed to both global scrutiny and ceremonial authority, responding to exclusion not with confrontation but with strategic elegance. It was a lesson in power dynamics, a demonstration of influence exercised without aggression, and a subtle reassertion of visibility in a space where acknowledgement is currency. Yet, Meghan's poise was not without its emotional stakes. Being deliberately sidelined, however subtly, carries an emotional weight, even for someone trained in public composure. The sting of exclusion, the awareness of subtle judgment, and the pressure of maintaining visibility under global scrutiny created an undercurrent of tension that was palpable. But Meghan's mastery lies in transforming that tension into strategic advantage. Every controlled gesture, every nuanced step became both a personal affirmation and a public declaration. Her ability to navigate this environment also highlights a deeper understanding of influence. Power is not only asserted through action, but through perception. By maintaining calm, composure, and elegance, Meghan projected authority and resilience. The snub, though intended to diminish, inadvertently amplified her presence. Every camera lens, every observer, every whispered comment became part of the narrative she controlled. Her poise transformed a potentially humiliating moment into a demonstration of strategic acumen, emotional intelligence, and unspoken authority. Social media, of course, quickly caught on. Observers dissected her every gesture, praised her restraint, and debated the significance of the snub. Memes, commentary, and analysis circulated, positioning Meghan as both victim and strategist, outsider and elite. The tension of the front row had become a global conversation, and every action she had taken to navigate it was being magnified and interpreted in real time. Yet even as she maintained composure, the evening was far from over. The subtle dynamics of influence, the whispers, the backstage negotiations, and the front-row tension all pointed to a larger narrative unfolding. Meghan's poise was a temporary shield, a strategic maneuver, but the questions remained. How would she navigate subsequent interactions? Could she assert influence in a space designed to marginalize her? And what hidden conversations, alliances, and decisions were happening just beyond the camera's view? Because in a world where every gesture carries meaning, every glance can shift perception, and every subtle action is interpreted through the lens of influence, Meghan Markle's response was only the beginning. And what happened next? The private exchanges, the strategic discussions, and the unfolding reactions of those around her would reveal layers of intrigue, conflict, and strategy that no one outside that room could have anticipated. The moment the cameras captured Meghan Markle's subtle but unmistakable exclusion at the Balenciaga Spring/Summer 2026 show, the online world erupted. Within seconds, the incident transcended the confines of the Paris venue, sparking a digital frenzy that would dominate social media for hours, days, and even weeks. Twitter, Instagram, and X were flooded with commentary, memes, and GIFs capturing every nuance. Her gaze, the tilt of her head, the deliberate redirection to an alternative seat. The front row drama was no longer just a fashion moment. It had become a global spectacle of influence, status, and perception. As the images circulated, reactions varied widely. Some users expressed outrage on Meghan's behalf, portraying the snub as a deliberate act of exclusion by one of the most powerful figures in fashion. Anna Wintour just sent a message to the world. You can be famous, royal, and rich, but still not sit where you deserve, tweeted one user. Others framed the moment as a subtle yet strategic maneuver by Meghan herself, praising her for handling the situation with poise and grace. Look at her composure. She didn't need to react. She commanded the space with silence, remarked another. The debate, polarized and intense, revealed not just opinions about Meghan but deeper cultural anxieties about power, privilege, and gender dynamics in elite spaces. Fashion insiders, journalists, and commentators quickly weighed in, offering their interpretations. Analysts dissected every photograph, exploring microexpressions, body language, and positioning. Stylists commented on her ensemble, noting how the all-white outfit functioned as a visual assertion of authority amidst exclusion. Editors speculated about the strategic messaging behind Wintour's decision, highlighting the deliberate control of visibility and narrative in elite fashion circles. Even those outside the industry could sense the gravity of the moment. A single gesture had sparked a global conversation about hierarchy, influence, and respect. The memes began almost immediately. Playful yet pointed, they illustrated the tension of the front row with humor, satire, and critique. One viral GIF showed Meghan navigating the front row as if through a minefield, captioned, "When you're royalty, but someone still controls the room." Another juxtaposed Meghan's poised composure with Anna Wintour's unreadable expression, emphasizing the unspoken clash of influence. These social media interpretations amplified the story far beyond the venue, turning a private gesture into a public cultural moment. The impact extended to the press, with fashion editors and journalists dissecting the implications of the snub in real time. Headlines ranged from the dramatic, Meghan Markle snubbed by Anna Wintour in Paris front row showdown, to analytical, power plays and protocol. What Meghan's front row snub says about influence in fashion. The narrative spread quickly across global news outlets, each interpretation layering additional meaning onto the incident. For Meghan, The public reaction was a double-edged sword. It amplified her visibility, but also intensified scrutiny, forcing every move to be measured, every expression calculated. Twitter threads exploded with debates. Was Wintour's decision a reflection of Meghan's perceived status, a personal vendetta, or simply an assertion of fashion authority? Users speculated endlessly about the backstage whispers, the unspoken negotiations, and the complex dynamics between Hollywood celebrity, royalty, and the fashion elite. Some argued that Meghan had miscalculated her approach, stepping into a world with its own rules and hierarchies that operate independently of global fame or titles. Others contended that her presence, even when sidelined, was a subtle disruption of an exclusive power structure, highlighting the delicate tension between influence and authority. The intensity of the online discourse revealed a broader cultural fascination with power dynamics, social signaling, and public perception. People were drawn not only to the personalities involved, but to the narrative of exclusion, resilience, and strategy. The incident became a case study in how influence is wielded invisibly. A glance, a gesture, or a refusal can speak volumes and reshape narratives. Every reaction online, from outrage to admiration, contributed to the evolving story, amplifying the drama far beyond the confines of the Parisian venue. Influencers and fashion commentators contributed to the frenzy, posting videos, live reactions, and commentary that dissected every angle. "Did you see her eyes?" one influencer asked on Instagram Live. "She knows exactly what's happening, and yet she doesn't falter. That's power." Another uploaded a slow-motion video highlighting the subtle tension between Meghan and Wintour, framing the moment as a masterclass in public poise under pressure. The digital amplification turned a private gesture into a global conversation about influence, hierarchy, and the subtle rules of elite spaces. The fashion world itself took notice. Designers, editors, and stylists analyzed the incident not merely as gossip, but as a lesson in the politics of visibility. The snub, captured in images and social media posts, became a point of discussion in meetings, strategy sessions, and editorial planning. Some insiders praised Meghan's measured response, noting that her ability to maintain poise while navigating exclusion was a demonstration of strategic intelligence and awareness. Others viewed the incident as a reminder of the rigid hierarchies within elite fashion circles, where influence is controlled meticulously and acknowledgement is a currency earned, not assumed. Meanwhile, social media engagement soared. Tweets and posts were shared, retweeted, and commented on thousands of times per minute. Hashtags such as hashtag #MeghanSnub, hashtag FrontRowDrama, and hashtag Anna vs. Meghan dominated trending lists, amplifying both the incident and the narrative surrounding it. The public, analysts, and fashion aficionados debated endlessly. Was the snub a reflection of personal tension, a strategic power play, or the rigid rules of fashion authority? Each interpretation contributed to a collective understanding that the incident was more than a mere seating arrangement. It was a demonstration of invisible influence, authority, and hierarchy. Beyond immediate reactions, the digital frenzy created longer-term implications for Meghan's public image. Her composure under scrutiny became a talking point, framing her as a figure capable of navigating exclusion with grace and intelligence. Simultaneously, the incident highlighted the enduring power of Anna Wintour, whose subtle authority could command attention and shape narratives without a word. The interplay between exclusion and poise created a narrative rich in tension, drama, and intrigue, a story perfectly suited for the world of social media amplification and public fascination. But the reactions were not limited to analysis and admiration. Critics emerged, questioning the optics, the strategy, and even the motivations behind Meghan's presence. Was this a calculated disruption, an attempt to assert influence in a space not traditionally hers? Or was it a misstep, an unintentional provocation in a world governed by subtle power dynamics? The polarized responses underscored the complexity of the incident, illustrating how a single gesture, captured on camera and amplified online, can generate layers of interpretation, debate, and narrative construction. And while the digital conversation raged, the whispers behind the scenes continued. Editors, stylists, and insiders exchanged observations, speculated on future interactions, and debated the potential ramifications of the snub. Meghan's response, though measured, had shifted the dynamics of influence, challenging assumptions and forcing recalibrations. The story had moved beyond the front row, beyond social media, and into the consciousness of the fashion elite, whose next moves could determine alliances, opportunities, and perceptions for months to come. The incident, amplified by Twitter and social media, illustrated a critical truth about influence. Power is not solely about visibility or title, but about the interplay of recognition, acknowledgement, and perception. Meghan's exclusion, though subtle, revealed the invisible rules governing elite spaces, while her poise demonstrated the art of navigating those rules without losing authority or dignity. The stage was set, the audience was watching, and the story was only beginning to unfold. And what happened next? The private responses, the strategic adjustments, and the hidden conversations among insiders would reveal the full magnitude of the incident, exposing secrets, strategies, and ambitions that no one could have anticipated. Anna Wintour's reputation for influence and authority is not just built on her iconic sunglasses, her perfectly coiffed bob, or her decades at the helm of Vogue. It is built on power exercised silently, strategically, and, at times, ruthlessly. The front-row snub of Meghan Markle, though shocking to some, is not unprecedented in Wintour's world. To understand the gravity of this moment, one must look at the history of her subtle but impactful exclusions, carefully orchestrated to assert hierarchy, control perception, and maintain authority over the fashion elite. Throughout her decades-long career, Wintour has been known to make silent judgments, often communicated through gestures rather than words. Seating arrangements at fashion shows, for example, are never arbitrary. Who sits beside whom, who receives direct acknowledgement, and who is placed just outside the most prestigious view lines. All of these choices convey messages that resonate far beyond the immediate moment. Celebrities, designers, and public figures quickly learn that acceptance in Wintour's orbit requires more than fame or acclaim. It demands alignment with her vision, understanding her unspoken rules, and navigating the subtleties of social hierarchy.